Now we turn our attention to the housing finance sector and speak to the chief at the National Housing Bank. Joining us today is Sriram Kalyanaraman, Managing Director and CEO at the National Housing Bank. Sir, many thanks for joining us today on NDTV. Last week, the National Housing Bank released operational guidelines for CLSS MIG. Can you walk us through the guidelines in detail, which in a nutshell are, interest subsidy for a certain income level home loans?
Exactly. Thanks for this. See, the government earlier had a subsidy for up to 6 lakh household income, which we now decided to call as CLSS 1. On December 31st, Prime Minister announced, probably for the first time anywhere, that the middle income group, where incomes up to 12 lakhs and 18 lakhs would be eligible for a subsidy up to loan amounts of 9 lakhs and 12 lakhs. This is historic, as the middle income group has never been covered by the subsidy. Unfortunately, by the time the rules and details are announced, the election code of conduct kicked in because of the elections in various states. And I think once that got over, last week we had this workshop in Delhi, which is presided over by the Minister for Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, Mr Kalyanaraman. What we are essentially trying to say is here that, look here, for the first time, the sweet spot in housing loans, where the income loans of 12 lakhs and 18 lakhs people, with the income limit of 12 lakhs and 18 lakhs have been covered. At 12 lakhs, technically, you would get a housing loan of 36 lakhs, and at 18, you could get up to 54 lakhs. Very roughly put, assuming you do not have any other liability. Now, that is the sweet spot in housing loan for most organizations, including housing finance companies and bankers. And there is subsidy up to 9 lakhs and 12 lakhs loan amount, which is effectively as the effect of bringing down your interest cost by about 50 to 75 basis points, depending on your loan amount. The tenor of the whole thing is extended to 20 years. So what we essentially do is we discount the subsidy and pass it on upfront, which means within 15 days or 20 days of you take the loan. So your principal effectively stands reduced to that extent. So these two are the main features. Of course, the details of the all this fine print would be available, and we are doing another workshop in Bombay today, and we would do it almost in all the state capitals to take that to the bankers and housing finance companies so that the maximum amount of people will get benefited. The other point is, as of now, the scheme is valid only for a year. So, which is very important, the bankers and the financial institutions take advantage of it and pass it on to the maximum number of customers.
And the interest subsidy, sir, is effective January 1st?
It is effective Jan 1, subject to the banks going back and get some undertaking from the customer and ensuring that the customer who's getting benefited out of it, this is the only house they have. Because this will not obviously be available if it is a second house or a third house.
So there is some verification that needs to be done then?
No, as of now, they just take a declaration. When you do a credit bureau report, because most in this segment would have taken a loan from an institution, which will automatically show whether there is an existing housing loan or otherwise. So it's not going to be very tough, and as of now we say take a declaration from the customers. That is how the CLSS 1 also works.
Okay, just to capture the extent of the benefit to loan takers, what is the EMI reduction impact due to interest subsidy, sir?
See, assuming your loan amounts are 9 lakhs and 12 lakhs, you will get a straight reduction of about 2,000 rupees. The EMI reduction will average, because it would a little bit of vary depending on your loan amount, but you are looking at somewhere between 2,000 to 2,800 range on the EMI reduction in the scheme per month. But that is theoretical, because how the scheme is going to work, I'm again repeating, is that we would just reduce your principal before the first month. As soon as the bank claims with us, within 1 week, we would have distributed the amount to the bank, which would in turn credit the customer's account. So what would happen is your principal stands reduced immediately by the amount of subvention. Now, then you want to work as a EMI reduction with the financial institution, or you want to pay your original EMI and pay it back faster. Both the options are available to the individual customer.
And you're saying there's no delay in the subvention? It happens in a week's time, sir?
No, absolutely no, because now CLS is one. You can go and talk to a couple of housing finance companies and banks. In fact, CLS is one. We are glad to say we started with a commitment of 15 days because there was a lot of, when we started this initial CLS is one, there is a lot of apprehension in the minds of the financial intermediaries. Will the subvention come? Will it come on time? We cut it down to 10, and the last few subsidies, I'm told, we are able to disburse in 4 to 5 days. Recently, on the Times Pro and Government of India initiative, we just won the award for the digital innovation on the CLSS portal, which we have developed in-house. Because the portal does sort of a minimal dedupe, and then it sends it. So we disburse the subsidy, and all our audit checks of the institutions happens much later because we are dealing with regulated entities.
Sir, can you honestly address the issues, if any, that housing finance companies have raised with regard to CLSS?
No, we will address it definitely honestly. I don't even need the word as honestly as possible. If there are concerns, it's open. So far, there are not much concerns because we have just announced it. The second workshop is going to happen. I'm sure as we go by, there will be some sort of issues or problems will be flagged which we would work. For example, if you take the CLS as one, to go by a track record, there are not less than 12 amendments which we made along with HOOPA, or we recommended to HOOPA, and Housing Ministry made those amendments based on the feedback of the financial institutions. So what we want to the customers, so far as it is not diluting the basic principles of income criteria in the first house, we are definitely willing to look at it. But based on our experience and the amendments made in CLSS1, we also would like to believe at this point in time the amendments required on the scheme would be extremely minimal. But having said it, always open to suggestions, and there are genuine suggestions. We are willing to discuss it, debate it, and take it to HOOPA for further changes if necessary.
Sir, as of today, how many lending institutions are on board for the credit-linked subsidy scheme?
See, in CLSS1, we have signed with 156 lending institutions. For the MIG scheme in Delhi, we got about 66 institutions signed. I'm told in Bombay today there is another 30 institutions which are ready to sign, so that will take to 96. The balance, we would eventually get it signed in about next 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, so what are the underlying demand numbers that you're working with? You know, where do you see the broad demand coming from?
See, what I am looking at today, and I go by statistics, if you take from January to December, there are about 25 lakh units which has been booked totally. Now, we have done some arithmetic around it and assumed 60% of this unit. See, we have done about 24 lakhs of units. So, we assumed that about 62% of this is eligible under the purely under the this category, which is about 16 lakh units. And out of the 16 lakhs units, even if I knock off something, because some of which will be very high, some will not be the first home unit, I am saying about 12 lakh units in the last 9 months. Now, when I say last 9 months, it's come from April till today. So we will knock off till January if you take, and also assume the next quarter what will be booked. For want of a better figure, I would put it around 6 to 7 lakh units, which should be eligible.
So FY18 could be a pretty strong growth year for the housing finance companies then.
Exactly, because even now we see the industry has grown in the first 9 months to by about 13-14% in spite of all this compared to the last year. So, of course, the data is there to be checked. Data is just arrived for December. We are cross-checking it. Subject to that caveat, I don't think there will be a major deviation on that. With the subsidy on the middle class, we would expect industry to go back to their original growth rate of about 18 to 20%, which it has been clocking for last 3 years. And remember, housing, when it grows, there are about 200, 220 ancillary industries which supports. So there should be a wide area of growth around the housing due to the subsidy and the goal for housing for all. Yeah, what we have done is we have just done 2-3 things. We have ensured that governance standards are increased in housing finance companies, because we have licensed about between last year and this year 12 to 13 new housing finance companies. We see a lot of interest coming in from small and medium players on the affordable housing segment. So one, on the refinance, we have eased the funding flow to the smaller companies with the approval of the board. The smaller companies can take funding from us. We have also worked with Reserve Bank and got the Rural Housing Fund and Urban House funding going, where at about 5.5% on an average, they could take refinance from me with their onward lending rate restricted. And 3, when we do all these things, we also felt that we will increase the governance standards and who governs these companies. And obviously, we have taken the steps in that direction.
So clearly, as demand is growing and more housing finance companies are entering the fray, National Housing Bank, issuing a directive to all home finance companies on governance. Good to get those details from you. Mr. Kalyanaraman, many thanks for your time today on NDTV.